Hey everybody, welcome to yet another session of the Business Central launch event. In this session, we're going to explain a little bit more about what's new and how you as an ISV can monetize your Business Central apps using the Microsoft Commercial Marketplace. When I say we, it's basically Peter and myself. Both of us are product managers within the Business Central team, and we're super excited having you here with us to talk a little bit more about what we're doing for ISVs to enable them to sell and monetize their apps so that they can really focus on their core business, while we help them on how you can basically bring your apps to market. The way that we're going to structure this session is, first of all, I'll be setting the scene, tell a little bit more about some of the background, the vision, the roadmap, and from there on, Peter is actually going to go through a couple of walkthroughs. The very first walkthrough is going to explain a little bit more of the fundamentals, because you might have seen some sessions from us already on this topic, but basically we're going to repeat that, so you don't really need to go back to see it. We're really going to talk about how you as an ISV transact on Appsource. From there on, we're going to talk about the side-by-side licensing. And side-by-side licensing is really if you want to use our licensing and monetization mechanisms together with the ones that you have. And from there on, we're going to really zoom in on how ISVs can really use the partner channel to bring their solutions to customers, because that's what we want to focus most of the session on for this moment. This is really what we have been focusing on for this release. And then we'll end up with some roadmap and some resources. All right, let's get started. Let's start with setting the scene. And for that, what we want to do is we want to zoom in a little bit more on the opportunity. And let's be honest, cloud has really been the fabric out there which connects all business and all departments at every customer. Cloud has really been there at every department and has really been enabling all departments to be much more productive and much more efficient. That's also why every department also needs more software. Basically means the business application opportunity is gigantic. In fact, IDC calculated that the cloud demand out there by 2026 is going to be 1 trillion. Think about that. 1 trillion is an amazing amount and an amazing opportunity for all of us. But the way that this software has been sold is also going to be different than the traditional sales mechanisms. Customers really want to explore, want to find information online, want to research, want to see reference cases, want to engage and try software without really talking to the ISVs. And that's where basically marketplaces come in. Because with marketplaces, prospects can really understand what you're offering, and that's basically what we want to help you prepare for as well. Because what we see is, in the futures, marketplaces are going to be the primary way of how software will be sold. Now, when we zoom in on that, like what's the Microsoft vision of that? Of course, we have our commercial marketplace vision. And centrally about that, Appsource is going to be at its core. Because we have the most vibrant community out there. If you go to Appsource at this moment in time, you will find more than 5,000 apps, and we should be really proud about that we have such a vibrant community. But it really is a place where partners have been used to start submitting and publishing apps. Partners can build towards Appsource, they can publish it, but it's also a way for them to engage with customers. We do a lot of efforts to drive customers and prospects towards Appsource, and from there on, customers can really research, as I explained it, but they can also try apps from there on, and then from there on, customers can deploy it and give feedback to you. So this is really at its core, which is the Microsoft Commercial Marketplace, or what for us means Microsoft Appsource. But there's more to it, and basically I want to show that by using this picture. Because this is very important for you to understand. If we think about the next pieces of the software, we really want you to understand all the platforms and all the tools, how they work together at Microsoft. And at its core, if you look to the bullseye of this picture, there's one catalog. And in one catalog, what we do is we're basically making sure that all the Microsoft SKUs are going to be made available into that catalog. So if you think about Business Central, but also the Azure services, M365, they're all being placed into that one catalog. But on top of that, we're also adding in third-party ISV solutions in that, so that it's all packed in that one catalog. Now, on top of that, we're going to put some rules, like, for example, which SKU can be transacted where, at what price, with which partners can basically use it. Next to those rules, if we really start focusing on the right side of the picture, there you can see who can actually buy that SKU from within that one catalog. And if we zoom in on the top, you can see that the solution, once it's in the one catalog, it can be made available through Appsource. But we're also opening up for potential experiences in the product where that SKU, which is made available in the one catalog, is now also been made available within the product, so we can build some in-product purchase experiences. And the other thing that we can do with it is, and that's what you see on the right bottom of the circle, is that that solution can be made available through a network of resellers, the CSP channel. And that's what we want to make available today. So you define it once, and once it's available in the one catalog, it can be made available on Appsource direct, so customers can buy directly from the ISV, but it can also be made available through the CSP reseller channel. If we go and look to the left side of the slide, that's where the publisher, the ISV, is basically able to configure how the solution is going to be made available, where it's going to be made available, but also the commercial information, the monetization information that comes with it. So Partner Center is that basically core platform that everybody's going to use to configure their solutions. All right, so we've explained how Partner Center, Appsource basically comes together. The other thing that we want to explain to you is what we've basically learned from our ecosystem. Because before we started working on the whole monetization topic, Peter and myself had the opportunity to talk to quite a bit of ISVs out there, and we've learned a couple of really interesting things from them. The very first thing that we learned is that no ISV out there is really interested to build out code IP on how to monetize and how to license. ISVs are telling us that it's basically not really differentiating them. It requires quite a lot of maintenance, and they're basically asking Microsoft to really come and help on how to monetize and how to license solutions. So they're really asking help on this one. The other thing that we've seen is that from a pricing model perspective, our ISVs have been really creative, because some ISVs sell the solution based on a per-user pricing model. Others are selling it, for example, on a per company or a one-time fee. And another batch of partners are basically selling it based on what we call custom meters, and that could be, for example, per payslip, per transport order, per transaction, etc. And then we've got another category of partners which are basically combining these things. Like, for example, they use a silver, gold, diamond offering in combination with, for example, custom metering, for example, documents processed. So it's pretty complex, the things that we will have to go and support to ensure that all ISVs out there can use our licensing and monetization platform. Lastly, we also see quite a bit of ISVs telling us that they want to use not only Appsource, but then also the CSP network out there to bring their solutions to market. And we do see that some have a preference to only use one, and others, they basically want to use the combination of it. I've explained to you at the beginning that we're basically not really at the start of this, because already 6 months ago, we will launch the very first version of our transactability. And in that version, what we did is ISVs were now able to sell their solutions directly to the end customer. So a customer could go in and buy the solution immediately from the ISV. Today, we see that multiple dozens of ISVs have already using that functionality, and actually give us really good feedback on the fact that they can now monetize directly their solutions and they don't have to invest in solutions themselves. In fact, we've got one of the ISVs out there, which is basically Western Computers, that told us, like, listen, we didn't want to go to Appsource before Microsoft offered us a licensing and a monetization platform, but now that they have it, they really feel strong that this was the best thing for them, and they really feel happy with this. Okay, now you might ask, what's this going to cost me if I jump into this? And this is where Microsoft really wants to take up a leadership role, because we're basically saying like there's going to be a 3% flat transaction fee for every transaction that you do. With that 3%, what you get is quite a bit. So first of all, we're going to ensure that that platform that we're building, that we've made available, that's available for you. So you don't need to invest in it. On top of that, you don't need to worry about renting Azure services to host your solutions, because again, your solutions will run on the Business Central platform and the ecosystem. On top of that, what you're going to get is that from a credit perspective and from a monetization perspective, you don't really need to go and chase your customer, because we will make sure that the money is collected and basically comes into your bank account automatically. So that's what you get from a 3% transaction fee. All right, so let's go to the roadmap, because we're basically supporting ISVs in this in a couple of ways. And we've done 2 waves at this moment in time. And Peter is going to show the first wave of the things that we've made available. So approximately 6 months ago, what we've done in October 2023, we've made sure that customers can buy solutions directly from an ISV using their credit card or using a Microsoft billing system. And that's what Peter is going to explain about as the very first step. And then we're going to move on to the next milestone, which is basically the CSP enablement, and we'll show that a little bit later on. And with that, Peter, are you ready to take over to give the people a tour of Appsource transactability?
Yes, thank you, Kurt. Yes, I'm really happy to be able to show these transact capabilities that Kurt mentioned some of our partners are already using, and which makes it much easier for partners to resell and for customers to purchase apps. So let's see how that experience folds out, both for the partners or the publishers, the ISVs, as well as the customers and the resellers. But let's begin in Partner Center, where you manage your offers as a publisher or as an ISV, right? So those are the apps that you have in Appsource. And in the marketplace offers, let's have a look at a sample app that we have. You might be familiar with it. It's on our GitHub repo or sample repo. That's the Convert Temperature sample app. And on the offer now in Partner Center, ISVs can select to sell their offer through Microsoft, right? That transact capability is applicable to add-ons only. So you might be familiar with that. We also have another concept which is based solely on using out-of-the-box APIs. We call them Connect apps. In that case, there's no app really, so there's nothing to transact on. So this is for the scenarios, the majority of the scenarios where there is an actual app in Appsource. Now, I highlight this section here under the offer setup, where you can opt in to sell through Microsoft, and you then have to select the option that you would like to sell through Microsoft. In this case, this app is already opted in, so that's why it's grayed out here. Okay, so that is the first step. Once you do that, then in the tab section in the offer setup, you will see a new tab called the Plan Overview. And in the Plan Overview, you can view your current plans as well as create new plans. And you can see in this scenario, as Kurt talked about before, we have a gold and a silver and a bronze plan. And you might wonder, what are plans, right? What are they? And you can think of them as variations over your SKU or your offer, right? So one example could be this level of functionality, like the gold, the silver, and the bronze. But another way of looking at plans or using plans could be to provide waterfall pricing. So basically that you give a discount based on the amount of licenses that your customers purchase at a single transaction, basically. And maybe you also could have differences between countries or markets in this context. And speaking of markets, when you are selling your plans or creating your plans, the country setup has now moved from the offer to the plan. So you can have You can have plans that are country specific, and they can have different pricing, etc. If you're not opting into transacting through Appsource, you will normally have the countries on the offer. That's what you have today. But once you opt in, they move to the plan, and that's an important difference to be aware of. Then for the plans, of course, we support the markets that we also support on the offers, and they are aligned with the Business Central markets. And then in this example, we decided that this plan was to be sold through UK and the United States. Now, once you then have defined a plan, in this case, we picked the gold example, then you can decide, as we talked about before, whether your pricing is a waterfall model. So basically, you can have a minimum amount of users that you need to purchase for this plan, or a maximum amount of users allowed for that plan, and then the pricing structure for that. But in this case, we create plans based on functionality. So that's the gold plan, and we will not specify a sort of user license interval. Then when it comes to billing, we support either a monthly billing or a yearly billing. And then, of course, you can give a discount if the customer selects a yearly billing or yearly subscription. You can also, as an ISV, select to provide a trial of your application or your plan. And we support a month of trial. And the customer or the purchaser still needs to supply credit card information in this process. And if they are not canceling that subscription, then the trial will roll over into a paid subscription. Then there's also the option to choose whether your plan is visible or not. We also call that public or private. And what is that? What is private plans versus public plans? So by default, the plans are public, and when you submit them as part of your app in Appsource, everyone can view those plans, basically the price list in Appsource Marketplace. But if you choose to make them private, then you can decide yourself as a publisher which customers should be able to see them. And then it's only those customers, when they log into Appsource, that will see those plans. And that is what private plans imply. So you basically extend it to specific AAD tenants or internet tenants. Now, when you set the price for a plan, the price is set in US dollar, but Partner Center will convert, with today's currency exchange rate, convert the prices to the markets that you define for the plan automatically. If you would like to, and probably you will, set the price yourself for different countries, you can of course do that. You can export the pricing, set the pricing differently in UK versus US, and then you can re-import those prices in on the plan so that it fits a price differentiation across the local markets. So once you set up your plans, you can review the plans, and you can then submit them or publish them, and then they will appear in Appsource. So this is the review process. This is just basically what you always do when you modify your apps in Partner Center. You review the changes before you go and publish them. So once they're published now, what is the purchasing experience for a customer or a partner or a reseller acting on behalf of a customer? Now, in this example, we looked at the Convert Temperature app, so we can go to Appsource and have a look how that looks. And you see that there's a couple of things that changed once an app opts into transacting through Appsource Marketplace. First of all, you will see that there's a Buy Now button that actually allows the customer to purchase, transact inside of Appsource. You also see that there's a new tab for the app called Plans and Pricing. And there the customer can actually see the different options for purchasing your apps, the different plans, the different functional SKUs or the different waterfall pricing. For example, in this case, again, we have gold, silver, and bronze. And we can see that for the bronze option, we have a free trial. So let's try to buy and see what happens, right? That leads to a checkout process, and as a customer, I can then choose which plan I want to select. And in this case, we're gonna splurge on gold and select gold and proceed in the checkout. Then I select whether I want to have a monthly or a 1-year subscription. And I can also choose whether I want to have a recurring billing once or recurring subscription once it elapses, right? Do I just want to have it automatically renew or do I want to manually handle that? And then, of course, you can choose the amount of licenses that you want to purchase in this transaction. And then you can move on and review your order and have the billing information, etc. Use your credit card to purchase it. Complete the transact. In this case, it's succeeded. And what the system will tell you now is that you purchased licenses, but you still need to assign those licenses to users. And so the way you do that is that you go to the Microsoft Admin Center and you assign licenses there. And that's what these different sort of blue dialogues, they nudge you towards. Go there and manage that. So there's another thing to be aware of, and that is that maybe as indifferent to sort of a mobile phone app purchase experience, then what happens here is that you only purchased the licenses, right? And as I mentioned, you have to assign those to the users, but you also have to install the app in your Business Central, in the customer's Business Central environment. So that is something that can be done either from Appsource as of today, but also from within the Microsoft Admin Center itself. So let's see how that actually is then done in the Microsoft Admin Center. And this could be an experience for the customer admin or for the delegated admin from the partner reseller. Now, you manage the purchased products and the licenses of these customers in their admin center portal, right? And here we can see an overview of the products that they have purchased. Now, in this example, it's actually a different scenario than what I just showed before, but it's a Hello World 4 sample app. And we can see that we purchased, in this case, 10 licenses, right? That's the overview of our product licenses. And we can go in and see the details on that. Again, we see 10 licenses. We see none of them have been assigned. We can see the subscription details about when it expires. We can purchase more licenses if we want to do that. We can cancel the license from within here, and we can also see the invoice at any point in time. We can also go and actually use these licenses, right? So we can assign it to a new user. So we can go to the Licenses tab, go to the Assign Licenses, and as part of that process, pick a user. And we can see here in this scenario, I now assign it to a user, and I have 9 licenses left. Talked about that from within the Admin Center, you could see the bill, and one of the advantages of this is that for a customer, they can then see or get a combined bill of all of the apps as well as the first-party license cost for Business Central in one single invoice, right? That makes it a lot easier for the customer to get the overview of the expenses for this solution. As a reseller, you obviously, as a publisher, as the ISV, you obviously want to have an understanding of how many customers have you sold to, what is the license revenue, etc. So Partner Center will offer some insights for you where you can actually go and see those details, like the orders, like the sold licenses, etc. And there's a lot more insights available. So this was an overview of how to set up selling your Appsource apps through the Microsoft Commercial Marketplace, right? But there's an important part here because we only set up the parts in Partner Center and making Appsource, surface that. But before you even get there, you need to have your app in place. And in the app, you have to define what we call entitlements. And as Kurt talked about before, you also need to think about, if you have existing customers, how to continue serving or making sure that the app works for them. And we call that the side-by-side support. I'm going to go through both of these now. So we're going to begin with the entitlements, and we're going to sort of embark on the journey that the developers at the publishers would need to go through. So this is an ISV partner, it could be you, who made an app, shipped it to Appsource, to the marketplace, and have several very happy customers today. And they get a great idea, right? Why not sell licenses for the app through Appsource? And using the Appsource transactability, that should be pretty easy. So the partner goes and creates a new plan in Partner Center, just like we saw some minutes ago. But before they do that, right, before they actually submit that, they need to create now these entitlements that basically maps the license that the user gets with the functionality that they have access to in Business Central. And that is controlled through permissions. And that's then the mapping, basically. On one side, you have the roles or the license what can the customer having, the user having a certain license. It could be a role, a group, or a service plan that they're a member of. What functionality or tangible objects do they have access to in Business Central? So this is an example of a simple entitlement and how it could look, right? So in this case, we have an entitlement for a great plan in our coffee app. And we see that the type for that entitlement would be per user offer plan. And that would be the sort of the normal setup for this. It also has an ID. And I'm not going to talk too much about that, but basically in Partner Center, 10 minutes ago, I talked about defining the plans. And in there, you can see the ID of the plan. And that's what you put into the ID here. So the Business Central knows that if as a user you log in and you have this plan assigned, as you saw before, you assign it in the Admin Center, then we know in Business Central that you should have access to these permissions, which you put into the object entitlements. Here you see that you get the coffee app full permission if you have this a great plan. So it's as simple as that. One important thing to understand here is that this is the maximum amount of permissions that you have access to if you have a certain license expressed in the entitlement here. But the admin in Business Central still needs to grant that specific user those permissions. Right? You can still have the license, it will map to permissions, but maybe the user doesn't have access to what those permissions give access to unless an admin has also granted the user those permissions. Now, after this, the developer comes back and says it doesn't work for the developer. Right? Often you want the developer to be able to have access to test out functionality and run with that. Right? But before you jump on transactability and use entitlements, basically any user have implicit entitlements to everything, right? They have access and you have to roll your own custom licensing today if you want to gate access to functionality. But as soon as you opt into using entitlements, we will start to expect and enforce entitlements for any user. And a developer is not part of the customer's intra or AAD. So by default, they would be locked out as soon as you opt in to using entitlements. So, what can you do about that? Well, you could purchase licenses for the developers, right? That's an option, absolutely. And maybe you should do that just to test out that functionality yourself, right? But you don't really want to start purchasing licenses for all of your developers, right? So what you can do is that you can also create an additional entitlement that grants its users a membership through being part of a group. So all of your developers could be part of a group, and then you give that group some license rights, right? So let's have an example of that. In the Office Admin Center or the Microsoft Admin Center, you can create or find these groups. So maybe we have a coffee developers group in this case. And then in your app, you can add an entitlement that then entitles any user who's part of that group to have certain permissions, right? And that could be different permissions to what your normal customers would have access to. Maybe you want to have super full permissions for a developer. Okay. So now the developer is happy. The license worked. Let's ship it. But then, new customers, they are super happy. They purchase licenses in Appsource. They will get them assigned in the admin center and everything works. But now we get to the side-by-side part, right? The existing customers might not be that happy because it used to work for them, the app. Maybe you had your own custom licensing. As soon as you opted into setting through Appsource, then we start enforcing in the platform that all users need to have entitlements, but all of the existing customers who didn't purchase licenses through Appsource will now be locked out unless you adopt side-by-side, which of course you have to do then. And so, the way you do that is that instead of forcing all of those customers to purchase licenses immediately, you can create a special kind of entitlement, which we call unlicensed. And that basically means that if we determine that a certain user that logs in does not have any license, we can give away the responsibility to your code to determine further whether they should still have access. For example, because your current custom licensing shows that they are indeed a customer, right? And the way you do that is that you, again, as we talked about, create this entitlement. In the entitlement, you map to some permissions that are required to run the code that those existing customers should use. That's probably all of the app. But then within the app, you can write in important places, just like you do today in your custom licensing, the same places. You then check whether the customer is unlicensed. And if they are unlicensed, you can go and check in your own custom licensing, call back. You can hard code based on the customer's entry ID, or maybe you have your own internal web service API that you can call to track whether these customers are your own customers or not. But you can do that from within code to basically allow customers to proceed just as if they had a license in your own custom licensing. Okay, now for the existing customers, everything is working as well. But then we get a call from the customer administrator that cannot set up the app. What are they going to do? Well, again, they could buy a license, but that's an option. But probably they just want to get access sometimes, and it's kind of like a waste of a license, right? But what we can also do is that, again, we can use entitlements to entitle local administrators to get access to certain functionality, for example, setup. So in the Microsoft System app, you can see some examples of two roles for that. There's the Dynamics 365 administrator and also the internal administrator. And then in your app, you can add entitlements for them and grant them access to various app functionality, maybe just setup functionality, right? So that avoids having to buy a license, and the administrators are now happy. Likewise, partners come back and say, hey, our delegated admins do not have access. So what can we do? You can buy a license. Well, actually, not so easy because, there could be business-to-business invites between the tenants. And so the partner could be part of the customer's tenant. But as a real delegated user, you normally don't get access, right? So instead, you can again give them an entitlement based on their role, and their role is a delegated admin in this case. So again, in the System app, you can see some examples of this, of the delegated admin or the delegated help desk user types or roles, and again, grant them certain access in the app, for instance, for setting up. So now it's working for everyone. It's working for the developers, new and existing customers, local as well as delegated users. Finally, you can actually also, based on whether users have other licenses, like Business Central first-party licenses, you can decide whether you want to have special functionality enabled based on that, right? So, for instance, in our System app, we have entitlements for Premium and for Embed. Those are probably the most interesting ones. And you can use those again in your entitlements. Then from within code, in this scenario, you can actually, instead of doing just the entitlement mapping, you can also just in code call using the isEntitled method to see if the current user have a certain license. And then you can decide what to do based on that. Okay, just to conclude, you use entitlements to do a mapping between the license or the role that a certain user has and what access they need to have in your application, right? You can mix those scenarios and you can call APIs in code. I added a link here at the bottom if you want to read more and see more examples of how entitlements work. So, a lot of technical details. Kurt, over to you to talk a little bit more about the roadmap going forward.
Absolutely. So Peter has been explaining quite a bit. And let me recap quickly what we covered so far. Peter has explained that we've laid the fundament in quite a bit of our platforms. We've talked about the changes we've implemented in Partner Center, in the Admin Center, but also on Microsoft Appsource. On top, what Peter explained is that with side-by-side, we've enabled that you as a partner can basically do really your own monetization system next to the monetization system, which has been made available by Microsoft. But we get a lot of feedback that that's not enough yet, because the way that the solution has been sold is through partners, through resellers. And resellers typically have special conditions. They have specific margins. And that's what we're going to focus on this release. So the release which is made available in April 2024, this is exactly what we're going to focus on at this moment in time. That's the extra new capabilities that we're making available and that Peter is going to show in a second. But before we go there, I want to explain a little bit of some of the CSP basics, because we do believe that it's important for you to fully understand how it works. There's two different CSP models available inside Microsoft. The very first model is a direct model. In a direct model, a customer will buy from a partner and the partner will buy from Microsoft. In an indirect model, a customer will buy from a reseller. The reseller will buy the license specifically from an indirect provider, and the indirect provider will buy from Microsoft. So there's an extra step in here. Everything that Peter is going to show you here is basically what you can see in the squared box, because this is the interface, the user experience that we make available to CSP directs or CSP indirect providers. Indirect providers, think of like, for example, TD Synnex, also Companion, and there's so many more. They have their own ordering system that they make available towards their resellers. But everything that Peter's going to talk about is also API enabled. And that basically means that those CSP indirect providers, the platform, the ordering platforms, the marketplaces that they have, that they should also enable the functionality that is going to be shown by Peter as well. So if you're an indirect reseller, you probably want to have a conversation with your indirect provider on what's been supported by today, but know that everything is supported to APIs and is actually being able to be used. Peter, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Kurt. So let's take another tour, this time on the CSP experience. So this is just going to be sort of a high-level conceptual flow through the processes for the ISV and the CSV partners, right? So first, as an ISV, you need to have an app that is already enabled with Transact. That's what we've been talking about the last 20 or 30 minutes, right? So that's a prerequisite for this. And then you can take that offer and opt into selling through CSPs. So the way you do that is as a publisher or ISV, you head to Partner Center, and there you, under resell through CSP, you can opt into selling through either any partner in the CSP program or specific partners, right? Once you've done that, enabled your offer for being sold through CSP, you need to go and create a private offer, which is basically a variant or a wrapping of your offer in CSP, right? So we go back to Partner Center, and you can now go into the Private Offers tab, and within there you can head to the CSP sub-tab and create a new offer. And what an private offer here is it's basically where you set the rules or the terms for that specific offer which plan you want to resell, which margin you want to extend, etc. And you can, of course, have multiple private offers that you sell through CSP. And here we have an example of the setup for such a private offer, where you can define, for example, the period that it's available in, a start and stop date. You can set, of course, the price for this, and the way you do that is that you create a margin or a discount that the reseller will be getting, or can purchase this private offer from. And then you can also decide whether you want to sell, or who you want to sell this to, right? So you provide a list of the CSP partners that you want should have access to this private offers. So here's the example of our convert temperature from before, where we created such an offer to sell this through CSP with a 20% margin, right? So that basically means that CSP can go in and purchase this at 20% discount and then resell it to their customers at a hopefully higher price than what they purchase it for. Now, when you're done as an ISV, you submit this private offer, and that makes it available for the CSPs to actually go and view those in their CSP catalog. And there's, different kind of CSPs, as Kurt talked about. So the experience here depends a little bit about which CSP you are. So you could be a CSP direct bill partner, and then you would use Partner Center. Probably most of you would be using an indirect CSP partner portal to do this, which would be based on top of the APIs that Kurt mentioned. So that means that experience will probably be different. Now, we don't have access to those, so we can't go through that experience. And as I said, it will vary between the partners, but conceptually, it will be aligned, right? Because the APIs are aligned with the experience I'm showing in a moment. But anyway, as a CSP direct bill partner here, you can go in to your Partner Center, right? And look at the offers, the private offers that are made available to you. You can see then the margins that have been extended to you. So that's basically the price list or the catalog that as a CSP reseller you have available. Then you would want to purchase then one of those offers on behalf of your customer, right? So again, you will go into the Partner Center and you would start by finding your customer, right? Because you're working on behalf of a customer. You have to be a delegated admin of this customer. And once you selected your customer, you can actually go into the subscriptions for that customer and see the list of the available different private offers in there and create a new subscription. And then you search for one of the subscriptions. It could be the convert temperature we saw before. You would see sort of the price for that, the margin that you have on that. And then you can review it and commit to purchasing it. And basically what that does is that it will, transfer the licenses to the customers. And then you as a partner will be billed, right? And you will be billed by Microsoft, and of course with the price after the margin is applied. And then the publisher will receive money from Microsoft or payment from Microsoft, and then the CSP direct bill partner can then charge the customer outside of the CSP marketplace. That's what Kurt showed as well. That's completely independent from how this is working, and they can choose whether they want to, what price they want to set according to the customer. But it's probably going to be the same or less than the public Appsource price for that plan. So, Kurt, can you talk a little bit about the roadmap and resources?
Absolutely. So again, Peter has showed quite a bit of stuff, and we've basically been giving you lots and lots of functionality here. But let me just do again a quick recap. We've showed how you as an ISV can make your solution available not only directly to customers, but now also through that reseller network. There's now there's thousands of resellers that you can sell your solution through, and you can basically give them special conditions as well. So that's the functionality which has been made available, but we also fully understand that we need to continue investing into this. The things that we have top of top of mind is that we need to make sure that we also support different pricing models, like not only the per user model, which is available today, but also that we have a per site license, like a one-time fee, and on top of that, the custom meters, and then probably also still combinations of the two, as I also explained into the beginning. That's stuff that we are working on. We are influencing all the teams at this moment in time. We don't really have set dates for when that's going to be, but rest assured that we are really committed in ensuring that we will get some answers for you very, very soon. But we're also very convinced that what's available today is already very useful for lots and lots of ISVs out there. So if you want to sell your solution in a per user model directly on Appsource or through your reseller channel, then we do have a couple of tips for you, right? So what would be the call to action?
So first off, look at the apps that you have today. And think about which of those makes sense or you can enable to sell in the commercial marketplace, right? So that could be Transact and CSP. And so that, of course, depends on how the licensing model fits your application. But that's the first step. Look at the fit for your app and how you can get those apps onto Transact.
The second thing is, like, you've got this recording which already gave you a high-level overview of all the things and all the platforms which are made available. But rest assured, we've got everything documented step by step and very much detailed. So if you would go to aka.me/BC app transact, that's where you'll find all the detailed information on how you can get started with making sure that your apps are transactable.
Yes, and then practice on a separate app first. I mean, you can submit an app where you don't have, this is especially important if you have existing customers on the app that you want to take into Transact. But even if it's a new app, you can practice on a test app to understand, especially how these entitlements work and get that right sort of in the first time. But most important if you have existing customers.
And that leads perfectly to the next point, because basically you talked about entitlements. What you really need to think of is, like, not only how the customers will use their app, but also how will your teams internally use the app. So the whole the side-by-side, which Peter just explained, is something that you really want to reflect on internally on how you're going to use it and how you're going to set it up.
Yes, and speaking of side-by-side, if you have existing customers, you need to work on the side-by-side story before you go into Transact, right? Because otherwise you have a risk of locking out your customers. As soon as you get that in place, it's not a problem, but you need to make sure that you test that out first with the test apps that we talked about before, for instance, but that's super important.
And then next, it's really nice to know as well that everything that we've shown at this moment in time is really proven, because we've had the opportunity to work together with dozens of partners out there to really test all the platform capabilities that we've just been shown. And we've created a Yammer site for that, where you can ask questions, where you can basically engage with that ISV community as well to see on how they have done some stuff and maybe share some best practices with them. So engage with us in the Viva Engage platform or on the Yammer platform, because the partners are there and we are there as well to help you respond to any questions that you might have.
Yes, and we showed today sort of two different tracks, right? There was the enablement of Transact in the Appsource marketplace, and it was then taking that offer and extending it, selling it through CSP. And start by making your apps transactable in Appsource before you move over to CSP. Get it working with sort of normal Transact, and then move over to CSP. So let's end this with the usual overview of our resources. If you have any questions, go and ask them on Yammer. Give us feedback on improvements, on ideas, join the office hours, etc. So thanks a lot for taking your time to view this session.
Also, thank you for me. Look forward to seeing you on Appsource with your transactable apps.